views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Welcome back to Moms for Justice, everybody. How are you doing? I'm Carolyn. I'm so glad to have you on the channel, and I'm so excited to spend my Sunday night with you guys. It's been a while. And I love Sundays. I went to church this morning, and the weather is kind of crappy around here, so I cooked and I did some things around the house. But I have been looking forward to this episode on Stephen Webster. Before we get into it, I just want to say hello to everybody. Thank you for joining me. And I also want to give a shout out to the newest Moms for Justice members. Gary Butcher joined, Peach Pathfinder joined, A Story to Tell joined, D, Allie Settler, J Bones 821, and Dotson's Rock. Somebody loves dogs as much as I love dogs. I have a Labrador Retriever, and his name is Ruger, and he's huge, and he's right outside this door. But I'm afraid if I let him in, he will bother me and hear commotion, because there's so much commotion in my house all the time. My mother lives with us, and she lives upstairs. I've got kids, and I've got a husband that comes in and out. And if the dog was in here with me, he would be crying and scratching to get out the door. Well, one of these days, guys, I'm going to have an episode where there's no one home, and Ruger will be right here, and you guys can hang out with him because he is the coolest dog ever. He really is. So anyway, thank you so much to the new members. Make sure you guys are liking this video, subscribe, share us. And by the way, maybe I'll mention it. Well, I'll mention it twice. Some of you know that Jocelyn and I are also doing a second channel that's in addition to Moms for Justice, because I really think our friendship as best friends, we have this camaraderie that's great, and maybe it doesn't suit everybody in true crime. So we have a new channel starting called Chitter Chatter, and I just put the channel up today, and there's no subscribers on it yet because literally I just opened it 3 hours ago, but we'll be starting to launch videos on just, being women at our age, menopause. We'll do a little true crime, top news, beauty, cooking, you name it. We're going to be talking about it. And we're just so good at that, me and her. So actually, if you're watching right this second, go ahead and open up another window on your computer, or just quickly hit the subscribe button on Chitter Chatter right now. This is what it looks like, just in case you want to see what the logo looks like. So when you're looking for it, there it is. It's Chitter Chatter, Carolyn and Jocelyn. It takes two. And I'm so excited. And that way, the true crime peeps that are just hardcore true crimers that maybe did not feel Jocelyn was for them, can go over there, and we can just chill out once a week and have that camaraderie that me and her have, because she's my best friend, and we giggle and laugh, and we're just down to earth, and get pajamas on and a cup of tea, and we're gonna be talking about all the things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So make sure you check in with that. Okay, so Stephen Webster, attorney Stephen Webster. Guys, he was the man that Dan Markel trusted most in his final days of his life. So this man is so important, right? And the one that Wendi Adelson should really fear the most right now. Okay, so just hours before Dan was murdered, Webster was preparing to file fraud charges, okay? And Webster told Wendi's attorneys back in June of 2014 that if these fraud allegations were not resolved amicably between them, he intended to file a very big motion on July 18th, which is the day Dan was murdered. Okay? So this is a move that he was going to make that could have exposed so much and things that she had been doing behind the scenes. Okay? And in this episode, I want to uncover what Webster knew. Some of these things you've seen, but I want to go through them and watch some of them again. But also how close he came to taking legal action against Wendi, right? And her attorney, by the way. So you see, he never really had that chance. And you actually think the DA is going to allow this to just end like this without showing that? I mean, there's skeptics out there that think Wendi is not going to be arrested, but you would also have to believe that they're willing to just choke on that evidence and let it go and not bring it to light. And like I said on my last episode, there are things and people that were not brought to the table in Donna Adelson's trial, like Sarah Youssef, Stephen Webster, and there's more. I've got more that there's a couple other people that could really, take Wendi down here that a lot of people don't talk about, like the Weinsteins, maybe. So we'll talk a little bit about them. But the thing is, you really think Georgia's just going to go like this and fold? I don't think so. Not with this. You would have at least tried to put that out there, right? Well, it hasn't been put out there. Is there a reason that it hasn't been put out there? Thank you so much, Christina. Oh, she's so sweet. Thank you for the super chat. I so appreciate you. Awesome. We've got Clarissa and Janine also on tonight as moderators. I don't think I sent an email. I'm sorry, but you guys are just so on the money. Poor Rich, he might be mad at me. Maybe he'll join later. He's one of the moderators as well. So why do you think the majority of what he could testify to was not asked in other trials? Now, he gave some information, and he has given a testimony in Charlie Adelson's trial, and I'm going to play that 12-minute clip for you guys again, and we'll go over it. But why do you think Georgia didn't make any more light on that during the trials? Well, I would say she's saving it for Wendi, right? I mean, it really is the bombshell that is going to really show another motive. Let's face it. There are motives here. There's so many motives. You've got the relocation, possible fraud charges. You've got, this is a stretch, but I've said it before. Amy Adler was like an icing on the cake. I think there was some jealousy there with Amy Adler. There are so many different motives here. Okay. Not wanting to share custody with the, Dan with the kids. And then there's also that's why I've compared Denise Williams. I've been doing some videos on Denise Williams because I think Denise Williams is a blueprint. That case is a blueprint, guys. And you guys need to watch it because that is a Tallahassee case with the same DA at the time of the murder and the same DA at the time of these trials. Okay. And you've got Tim Jansen. Tim Jansen represented Brian Winchester in the Denise Williams case. Well, Tim Jansen's out there talking on Joel's show, STS. So, and I'm just using him as an example of similarities here. I never say that word right. Similarities. Somebody said I had a speech impediment last time. I do flub my words sometimes. I'm sorry. But anyway, there are a lot of similarities to those two cases. So anyway, I did try to get Stephen Webster on this show. I have reached out to him. He has not responded to me. Maybe it's because I'm maybe not a big enough channel yet. I don't know. I'm certainly bigger than it was, but I haven't quite really reached the STS status. Of course not. But here's one thing I was hoping that he would be listening right now. Okay, so I tried to get him to come on the show. He has been asked questions by other podcasters pertaining to this bombshell information about filing charges on the day of the murder. And I felt myself wanting to know more about him in the interactions on the other podcasts. Okay, so in fact, there is one podcast, and I'm not going to mention their name, just out of respect. I'm not out to bash other people, but there was one podcast where Stephen Webster's on it, and I felt like he was cut off. I felt like there was a moment that Stephen Webster was having where he was really expressing his feelings about this whole experience. And I'm all about the human experience, okay? And not just a headline. So please pray for me that he is going to reach back out and email me back after he hopefully sees this. So, and again, I'm not a journalist or an attorney. I'm just a regular Joe Schmo like all of you, right? And I'm just someone who believes that stories like this, they really deserve to be told fully and not edited for time, not reduced to like bullet points. You know what I mean? Stephen Webster wasn't just Dan Markel's lawyer. He was one of the last people that Dan trusted at that moment, and someone who saw the pressure building, you know, Stephen seeing the pain behind this custody battle and the legal lines that Wendi may have crossed. So if he speaks with Moms for Justice, and I can only pray that he'll write me back, it could offer some clarity and not just legal facts, okay, about, you know, a father's final days, okay, and a lawyer's quiet fight for some justice here. So here's the thing, and maybe I'm being cocky here, but I really think he's going to see this video, guys, because how many thumbnails and videos are out there on YouTube where they're doing a whole video on him, okay? I have no doubt in my mind he is going to see this video because somebody's going to go, hey, Moms for Justice just did a video on you. Here it is. And his big, his face is blown up real big on the thumbnail. So I'm hoping to attract his attention. And if he does see this, I want to make sure he's still watching by this point. How many minutes are we in? I don't know. 11 minutes in. I want to say to him, Mr. Webster, Stephen Webster, I would really like to hear from you about your time working with Dan Markel. And, I already know many of the main details, but what I don't know is your experience fully, what it was really like during those final days. I mean, it has to have been life-changing for you. It's probably on his mind when he wakes up and on his mind when he goes to sleep at night. And I really value that. And I want to give you a platform to tell us about, to give us all the details about the charges and all that. Not on this podcast. I want to know how you're feeling and what it was like to sit with this man and what was he going through, and go ahead and just vent. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, and you can approve it. We could do a pre-recording, whatever. And I just want to give you that platform because I think you guys, the viewers here, would really want to let him go ahead and ramble on, right? Let him ramble on. There's a lot for him to share and express about this experience. So this would all be in your own words and on your own terms. So hopefully he hears this, guys, and will send me an email, momsforjusticenow@gmail.com. And, let's just have a phone call. We'll talk. Okay, so let's go into a little personal background and I'll play some clips and then I'm going to give you guys some insight. And then I have a few other people I want to talk about in regards to who else could come forward and make a difference here and make a change so that we go from, I'm not sure we want to arrest Wendi to, yeah, we're going after her, right? So that's what I want to do. So Stephen Webster earned a BA summa cum laude from Florida Atlantic University. And this is what I could find, guys. So if I'm wrong and Stephen's listening, you need to correct me, but this is what I found. So he had a 4.0 GPA and his JD cum laude from Florida State University College of Law. He was admitted to the Florida bar in 2005, and Webster originally worked in the construction industry. Interesting. He witnessed a close friend endure a wrongful criminal prosecution, which inspired him to attend law school and pursue a career in suing the justice. I'd love to hear that story too. That'd be awesome. So as far as his legal career, after law school, he served as assistant state attorney in Florida's Second Judicial Circuit. He then entered private practice at a prominent white-collar criminal defense firm. He handled complex multi-state fraud and financial cases. Subsequently, he joined a large Tallahassee firm with a broad practice portfolio, civil litigation, employment, administrative law. And then in January 2013, he left to form his own firm. And he later partnered with Louis Jean or John. Louis, I'll just say, I'm not going to attempt to say his middle name wrong. So Louis Baptiste. And he created Webster and Baptiste PLLC. Okay. And this is just the face of the website. And that is him and Louis. Okay. So he is now known as a trial attorney handling criminal defense, civil rights, employment, and business cases. And I think he really did add on things to his repertoire because of Dan Markel, for sure. And I'm sure that he has inspired him to be a better lawyer and to seek justice in similar style cases as this. I mean, I can't imagine that he wouldn't. So anyway, he continues to be based in Tallahassee. And his offices are on Thomas Phil Road. So if you need an attorney, call him. Okay. So here's where it gets, here's where his story begins, like his life-changing moment, right? So in June 2014, he was retained by FSU law professor Dan Markel as his lead trial counsel in a contested family law custody case. Markel and Webster became friends during the divorce process. Okay. And Webster recalls that he was a friend to Dan, that they became friends. At Markel's request, Webster even helped hire law student Louis Baptiste to assist on a separate criminal matter. And Markel introduced Baptiste to Webster. So I thought that was so cool. And then now he's got this person, this human being that is like essentially his partner now, that is a piece of Dan Markel. How amazing is that? I mean, he must look at him every day and just be so thankful. You know what I mean? I know I would be. So, but unfortunately, just after he connects these two, and then there's, a little bit of back and forth between Webster and Markel, Markel is murdered, as we all know. So this sudden death of him, it wasn't just the loss of a client, guys. He was becoming friends with Dan Markel. He really admired him as an attorney. And I think in some ways they were helping each other, right? So Stephen needed to do some things for Dan Markel. Dan Markel needed this help. But at the same time, he was broadening Stephen Webster's abilities and taking him to another level because Dan Markel was like this super smart attorney, okay? And what a blessing for Stephen Webster to have somebody like him, even for the short time that he had him. I just think it's such an incredible, it's just fate. You know what I mean? Things always happen for a reason. They really do. So because of the relationship, Webster did have a very intimate knowledge of what was going on in that divorce. And maybe there's some things he can't talk about, or he has to save it for later. But the divorce was finalized in 2013, 50-50 shared custody arrangement at that time. Prior to that, Wendi had tried to move the children to South Florida, as we all know, in the big relocation request, which was denied. And she wasn't allowed to ever request it again, just so you guys know. So Webster was preparing then at that point, post-divorce filings on Markel's behalf. And then, there was a lot of this back and forth going on that was getting really nasty, acrimonious, as it's been said in court. It was not a pretty thing going on. And it was even getting nasty at the law school. People were talking about their divorce and about these motions, just constant back and forth. And really, at the end of the day, guys, Dan did not want to be subjected to being put down or ridiculed in front of his children, okay? And more importantly, just wanted his children to be okay, them to co-parent, and just to raise the boys well. And of course, he was never going to let her move away, because what good father is going to let their children move away? I mean, you have to just think about the request she's asking. At the time, these boys were 3 and 4 years old. And you'd ask to go down to Miami to relocate. All that would be indefinitely, well, not indefinitely. It would be until the time they're 18. Okay? Think about that, guys. That is a lot of years. You think a good, loving father is going to let his kids take off and rarely see them? And, an occasional flight to Miami and I'll see my kid. No. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Listen, there's a lot of good dads out there. I know there's deadbeat dads and there's really good dads. There's good dads that are like, heck no, I have just as much right as you. And you're not taking my kids from me. You're just not. So I just love that. I just love that he was fighting for that. And those boys need to know. If they don't know, they're going to find out. But those boys need to know how much their daddy loved them and was fighting for them, you know? So I wanted to stress that to you guys. So anyway, I got sidetracked there, but so Webster's primary role in the Markel case, there was like this underlying family law conflict, okay? So he has not been accused of any wrongdoing. Rather, he has cooperated with investigators and the prosecution. I'm talking about Stephen Webster now. In 2023, Webster testified for the state in Charlie Adelson's trial, drawing on firsthand knowledge of Markel Adelson divorce. Now, I'm going to play that clip. It's not too long. Let's play it and let's refresh on it. And then I'm going to play 2 quick interviews that he had given with 2 other podcasters and really kind of like break down some of this stuff here. You guys ready to go? How's everybody doing? If you're just joining me now, thank you so much. I'm so glad to spend Sunday night with you. It's going to be a good show. We're talking about the amazing Stephen Webster and how this case has actually, there's some positive at the end of it, right? Like this man, I'm sure, is driven by the friendship and the experience that he had with Dan Markel. And I just think it's so important to talk about. I really do. All right. So let's play a little of this, guys. All right. And let's take a listen.
My name is Stephen Webster. Stephen Webster.
How are you employed?
I'm an attorney.
How long have you been a member of the Florida Bar?
Since 2005.
Did you represent Dan Markel?
I did.
During what time period did you represent him?
I think it was May of 2014 and until he was murdered.
And during the time that you were, well, let me ask you, before his murder, when was the last time you had spoken with him?
I spoke to him that morning.
Right. And what was the main goal of your representation of Mr. Markel?
So, I had just started my firm, and, you know, like any small business, you're scared and you're hungry, and a friend of mine called me, Tor Friedman, and said, I have a client for you. And I was like, okay. And he said he's a law professor. And I was like, okay. And he said, it's a family law case. And I said, well, Tor, I don't do family law, and you know that. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. He's a law professor. He'll teach you everything you need to know. And I said, okay, well, that makes sense. So I agreed to meet with him. And the night before, I read all the papers, and they were voluminous. I printed them and actually read every word. And we'd already set up a meeting at Voodoo Coffee on Tennessee Street. And I really didn't think I was going to accept the case. I could just tell from the tenor of the papers that it was really, really contentious, and it just didn't feel like something I probably wanted to get involved in. But I wanted to meet him anyway. And so I met him, and I liked him. I liked him a lot. And so I decided I would take the case. I mean, it's not a prerequisite that I like you to represent you, but in something like that, I didn't want to get involved in a contempt-type case with law professors, where ultimately it could end up being disrespectful to the court, and I didn't want to be involved in something like that if I really felt like it was going to be that kind of a relationship. But when I met him, I didn't feel like it was going to be that way, and so I agreed to take it. And his primary concerns were he wanted to get more time with his children, if at all possible, but he didn't want to change the kind of the time sharing. He had a kind of an unusual request. He wanted to see if there was any way that he could see the children every night when he didn't have them, to tuck them into bed and kiss them goodnight. And he said, look, I'll only stay 5 minutes. I promise I won't bother anybody, and I'll leave. And I said, Dan, that's probably never going to happen. That's just probably not reasonable. And then he was really concerned about parental alienation, which at the time I wasn't, really familiar with it. I didn't do family law, but I was familiar with it from the perspective of I learned about it in law school and stuff like that. But he was really concerned that the grandmother, Donna Adelson, was really trying to drive a wedge between him and the children. And he actually told me that he heard her refer to him as stupid on a Skype call. He couldn't see her in the Skype screen, but he heard her say something to the effect of "stupid's on the phone," and he was livid.
So sad.
And he was ready to basically kind of go to war over that.
Did that sort of reference the filing that we're familiar with where grandma says you're stupid, and he was seeking to have grandma enjoined from having unsupervised contact with the kids?
Yeah, and I didn't have the opportunity to actually talk to him about that yet because he was killed. But it was my understanding that after that filing, he heard her. Actually, he heard her. Because that's what he told me. He said, I heard her call me stupid. But she wasn't in the screen, but he knew her voice. And so he was very upset about that. And then the other thing that he was upset about, he wanted the Holocaust diamond back.
So the property of his, family property that Wendi had.
Yeah, and
Okay.
he wanted that back.
All right, so what about money? Was he worried about money?
No.
Any chance that the case could have been resolved through $1 million payoff to Dan Markel from the Adelsons?
In exchange for what?
A relocation.
No.
We've heard some testimony that everything was going well between Dan Markel and Wendi in the few weeks leading up to his death. Do you have any knowledge of that fact?
It's untrue. There's a reason he hired me. He didn't retain me because he needed a friend. Tor basically told me on the phone call, he said, look, there's going to be a trial, and it's going to be acrimonious, and he needs a lawyer that can go into the courtroom and be prepared to fight. He said, that's why I think you could handle this case. And we were heading towards a trial. And he certainly, he sent me an email the day before talking about how he was irate because Wendi, unbeknownst to him, had actually enrolled or applied to have been enrolled at the School of Arts and Sciences. And she didn't even talk to Dan about it. So he found out the day before when he got called from the school saying that Ben had been accepted. And so he emailed me and said, I'm irate about this. He said, I don't think it's appropriate. Okay. So, no.
So there were a bunch of issues still going on.
Yes.
It was hot at the time.
Yes.
All right. And there was some suggestion that Dan Markel was expected to lose all the filings that were currently pending at the time of his death, and Wendi was expected to prevail on everything. Do you agree with that assessment?
You mean like with the contempt and all of that?
Yeah.
No, I would not have got involved if I thought he was going to lose on the contempt. My reputation travels with my clients too if they're doing things like that, right? If you're representing a client who is disrespecting the court, it's hard not to feel like that's bleeding off on you and you're disrespecting the court. And in Tallahassee, Florida, if you practice in this circuit, if I disrespect Judge Everett today, every judge in this circuit that matters to me is going to know about it before lunch tomorrow. And it's just, no. So, no, I would not have accepted. That's why I didn't think I was going to take the case when I read all that.
And seeking contempt is kind of a big deal amongst lawyers, right?
Yes. Contempt is, it's a very ugly kind of prospect. And as a lawyer, that was one of my main concerns is, she was a lawyer. And I did feel like she should be held in contempt. She didn't disclose things on her financial affidavit, and Dan convinced me of that.
But that was to be determined, right?
But
by a court.
Yes, but in my mind,
Yes.
that was the only reason I took it.
Okay.
And, at the end of the day, you can lose your law license for that.
Bingo.
I guess you would have to report that to the bar. I didn't research it, but the court would refer it to the bar. If the court found you were in contempt, the court would refer it to the bar, and, you could lose your law license. So, yeah, it's pretty serious, in that regard.
We heard, I think, from both sides in opening that Mr. Markel was brilliant, but I'm not sure anyone that actually knows about that has told us. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Love this part.
Yeah, it was why I decided to take the case. I liked him. He was actually funny. He had good humor about it. Even kind kind of as acrimonious as all of this was, the big picture stuff he didn't have any anger, He was angry about the calling him stupid. That made him angry. But I think in his mind, eventually a lot of this stuff would resolve and should resolve. He wasn't vindictive, or vengeful. And that was a big part of the reason why I was willing to get involved. I felt like he was kind of looking at it like a business deal still, with the exception of the stupid comment. So he was funny and obviously smarter than I am, that's for sure. So,
what are a lawyer's ethical obligations to a client in terms of the client knowing what is in the filings that are being filed on their behalf?
Well, I think that depends.
It's not an expert.
Are all attorneys in Florida governed by the rules of professional conduct?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you, as a 20-year lawyer, familiar with those rules?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what are those rules in reference to, can a lawyer put things in a filing that the client doesn't know about or not?
You have a duty to keep your client informed. That is an actual affirmative duty on every lawyer. That you have to be in contact with your client, keep them informed of important events that are going on in the case. There are certain decisions that only the client can make, like whether to testify, things like that. But there are certain decisions that a lawyer can kind of make, procedural decisions on filing certain things. But you have a duty to keep your client informed of important events.
If Dan Markel was planning to move or seeking to relocate himself at the time of his murder, would you have known about that?
Yes.
And was he planning to do that or trying to do that?
Absolutely not.
One moment, please, Your Honor. Further questions?
Okay. Hold on one second. I think he's going to ask him a question. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Webster.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
You started representing Professor Markel in, I think you said May 2014, around that time frame?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
By the way, at that point in time, what did you specialize in? Were you a divorce lawyer?
No.
Had you ever done a divorce case?
I had done some, like I worked for other firms, and but for the most part, if I was going to take it, me personally, it would have to be no kids involved, and one of those situations where the assets were already agreed upon how they were going to be split up. I didn't want to get involved in fighting in cases where kids were going to get hurt. It's not how I wanted to use my law license.
Excuse
Love
me,
it.
I'm sorry for talking over you. What did you specialize in?
As an attorney, I don't think I'm allowed to say I specialize in anything unless I'm board certified. So I'm not board certified in anything.
What did you? What type of work did you do more of?
At that point in my career, I'd primarily done a lot of criminal defense work.
Okay. So you were a criminal defense lawyer who was going to do a divorce case.
Yeah, I guess that's fair to say.
Were you aware that Professor Markel's previous lawyer had quit?
I saw in the filings that lawyers had withdrawn, and yeah.
And you never went to court with Professor Markel, right?
No, he got killed before I had my chance.
You're aware that the court admonished Professor Markel in court earlier in the year, right?
I don't know if I was familiar with that. I read the papers. If it was in the papers, look, it appeared to me that it was very acrimonious, and there were lengthy pleadings and filings, and it was one of the things I talked to Dan about. I said, you need a lawyer. You need to stop drafting voluminous pleadings, and we need to just get this on the rails and focus on what matters.
Okay. Ms. Kappelman asked you about court filings and the ethics of lawyers. You recall her asking you that?
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you file things. You have to keep your clients informed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you file things, and you're able to file things that you don't have to go over every word with your client, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
No further questions.
Okay, so you can see that how life-changing this must have been for him, right? He was doing, other areas of law, And Dan Markel, this brilliant mind who probably knew how to file a motion quicker than any other practicing attorney because he's teaching this all day long, right? So he is like a dream come true. I mean, what are the chances of an attorney saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to go down to the law school down the street and see if somebody will like work side by side with me. They don't usually do that. You pass the bar, you're supposed to know what you're doing, and they do know what they're doing. But I mean, a law professor, he's teaching this stuff over and over again. So no wonder why when he talks about, oh, Dan had to like cool it a little bit because he kept filing motions because he was so good at it. He was just so smart and he just knew how to do everything. He probably could finish all of his sentences for him because he was that versed. And he was probably, I mean, let's think about, guys, think about this. Dan Markel never really got to practice, right? He went right into teaching. So there had to be like this fire between these two, right? Like this fiery camaraderie and partnership that, gosh, who knows where it could have gone if these crazy Adelsons hadn't taken his life. Okay. But I mean, can you imagine? Maybe Dan would have been practicing today. I mean, there's a reason for everything. And I just want to know so much more about this man because I really do think it was such a life-changing experience for him, So what was life like after the case for Wendi, the kids, and the Markel family, and also Stephen Webster? So, like I said, I don't think Stephen Webster was able to have a day go by where he was not thinking about Dan Markel. And even though he's not at fault for anything, he was one of the last people to talk to him. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's got to nag at you every day. It's like this guilt of like, I can't let a day go by without continuing this crusade. So I don't think Stephen Webster is okay with letting this go and letting Wendi move on. I don't. It sounds to me like he's got a bone to pick, right? So Georgia's saying stay tuned. We know, and somebody asked before, why didn't Stephen Webster take the stand? You know what? I don't know. Maybe because it really had only to do with divorce proceedings, and Donna was not part of a divorce. The only thing Donna was a part of that he could testify to was what Dan was telling him about the disparaging remarks that Donna was saying. So could he have been called? I think so. Now, I'm not an attorney, and this is where you would ask like Carl Steinbeck or somebody like that, or even Tim Jansen if you want to ask him. Could that have been brought up? And maybe I missed it in one of the podcast clips. Maybe that was brought up. So I'm going to play some of that also. And then I'm so excited for after this. I want to get into a few more people that I think could make a change here for Wendi Adelson to possibly get an arrest. I mean, that's what we are all waiting for, right? But I do want to continue with Stephen Webster. Before I do that, if you're just joining me, like, share, subscribe. Make sure you guys are subscribing. And I want to make sure I get the people that were interested in the second channel that I got going on with Jocelyn. We're going to be doing like a talk show, kind of like The View, on everything from, top news, beauty, sharing tips, raising kids and all that. So right now, right where you are, I want you to open up a new window if you can and go ahead and subscribe because I just opened the channel today. Okay. And I want to see some subscribers on here so we can, we'll have some good people going when we start. And I'm really excited. It's going to be like in the next 2 weeks. So Chitter Chatter with Carolyn and Jocelyn. We're going to do it once a week. And Moms for Justice will continue with me just as normal. But please go ahead and subscribe to us. Give us some support. We would really, really appreciate that. So there's that. Okay. So now I want to play another clip for you guys. How's everybody doing? Let's see what we got. Some comments going here. Okay. Sherry, how you doing? I have been thinking about this a lot. Georgia has to approach Wendi's case differently. She plays a long game and is going to get it right. I totally agree with you. And I think there's a reason here for everything, because I just find it hard to believe that she would just go ahead and fold with all these witnesses that have never been called. And the in-depth story from Stephen Webster, I don't think has really ever been told. That just wasn't enough. I know there's more this man has to say. So, and we want to see, what else he knows. What else has Dan said, right? Okay, so Diana C., you must stay in academia to become a professor. They highly frown upon tainted folks from private industry. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. And you know what? He was on the up and up with the latest, Dan Markel. So he probably knew better than practicing attorneys on what needed to be done and how it should be done effectively and cleanly. You know what I mean? To be done the correct way. Hi, Leslie. No way is Georgia done. You can see it in her eyes. It runs in her veins. Totally agree with you. What did her parents say? Her parents said, our daughter is so competitive. So she ain't folding. She's not folding, guys. Let's see. Anybody else got a question here before I move on to the next one? Let's see what we got. I love to talk to you guys. That's one thing about this channel is that I like to acknowledge you all on here and get your comments out so you feel heard. If you have any questions, let me know. Teresa, can you imagine being the one that knew what was going to go down that day and then receiving a phone call that your client was killed? I'm sure he was in total shock and traumatized. Yeah. Okay. So this is why I made this channel. Okay, I am all about the human experience, and true crime, of course, naturally have an interest in true crime. But that's why, like, a lot of people, they love to hear the forensic side of things. And yeah, I like to hear that, but I love to hear the personal stories and to hear the human goodness in people and the tragic side of somebody. And this story is so tragic. He was going back and forth with him on the phone. And I think he might mention it in the next one, but I think he was annoyed because like Dan didn't call him back or something at times in the past. And so he thought when he wasn't returning a call to him that was just Dan being Dan, super busy and not able to get back to him. And then it turned out that he was killed. So I just, this man probably carries such a weight with him. And it's just I just want to know more because literally, what did they sit down in a diner or a coffee shop or something and they just chatted and I want to hear more, and I also respect the fact if maybe he just wants to keep that for himself. But I did notice that he has been cut off in interviews before when he started getting more into his feelings about the whole thing. And it kind of annoyed me. So I would love to have him on and I would love to be able to just let him go and just, talk till the cows come home. Right? Wouldn't that be awesome? So I hope he hears this and he gives me a call. Okay. Hi, Maya. Why not invite, if any attorneys or psychologists or people with good insights to invite to chat with you would be interesting? Sure. Like I'm all down for that. Now I have a psychologist friend that I might have on that I think would be really great. I think he would cater better to talking to us about the boys, the sons, because he has worked with teenagers most of his life. And I think he could give some really interesting insight into what the boys are going through, what they have gone through, and what they possibly could start doing based on, previous children that he has treated that has had some sort of tragedy and maybe didn't have all the puzzle pieces put together, and then they get older and then they want to figure it out. Same thing. It's no different than like, you're adopted and later on you get that natural curiosity to want to find your biological parent. How is that any different than this? Well, I don't think it's any different than this. I think that naturally, we all have a tendency to want to be a part of our makers, other than God. We've got mom and dad and all they have is her. So at some point they're going to go, wait a minute here. I really want to know a little bit more about my dad. And then that's when like Ruth Markel comes in. And then I personally, and I'm going to go into this later. It was actually going to be a section I was going to talk about, but, you're going to go to somebody that is going to be willing and open to that. And you all know that if those boys went to Wendi and said, you know what, we'd really love to connect with our cousins, or we'd love to talk to Ruth and Phil, grandma and grandpa, whatever they could call them. And do you actually think she's going to be supportive of that? No, she's not going to be supportive of that. So those boys do not have her to go to, I think. Hypothetically, because maybe for all I know, I could be wrong. But hypothetically, or my theory is that they probably, it's been made known to them, do not mention daddy, or do not think you're going to have any relationship with these grandparents. So then who do they go to, right? Then who do they go to? So, and I'll get into that. There's people that they can go to, but I didn't want to get off track too much from Mr. Stephen here. So yeah, I'm going to play, let me play, should I play a little bit of this one? Okay. Justice Served TV, awesome channel. Michael Bryant and Linda Kenny Bodden. Do you guys know that channel? And I'm going to play a section of this interview here, and we will listen to them talk to Stephen Webster here, and let's see what he has to say. He does get a little more personal here, so let's see.
But yeah, no, family law is not my shtick, but I had just started my firm, and a friend of mine, I think he was looking out for me. He was trying to, send some cases to me. And he called me and said that he had a case that he thought I could really help the client out on. He said, it's a law professor, it's a family law case. And I told him, I said, well, I don't really do family law. And he said, well, it doesn't really matter. It's not really family law at this point. It's kind of more like almost criminal in nature, because they're accusing each other of contempt and of fraud. And he said, and to the extent that there's family law issues that you need to come up to speed on, your client's a law professor and he'll teach you everything you need to know. And I said, well, I guess that does make sense. And, obviously having a chance to just starting my firm to represent a law professor like that, could obviously help push my firm forward and bring some attention to my firm. So I agreed to meet with him, and I read all of the papers that had been filed between the parties. And I had concluded that I did not want to get involved because the prospect of representing a law professor who could ultimately be held in contempt of court, or even proving that another law professor, Wendi, committed fraud on the court and could be held in contempt of court. There could just be significant ramifications from that, either going either way. And the stress that I would have probably shouldered in trying to navigate that just didn't seem like it would be worth it to me. So I kind of made my mind up I was not going to take the case, but I told Dan I would meet with him. So I met with him to have coffee. And he just changed my mind. I liked him. He wasn't vindictive. He wasn't foaming at the mouth. And he cracked jokes. We just had a very normal conversation, which is also kind of weird, for a law professor. You guys probably can attest. You're talking about some bright people that sometimes are eccentric, and definitely a little bit different, a little quirky. Not Dan. He was very kind of down to earth, like just a normal guy. And after talking to him, I realized that it wasn't about money for Dan at all. It was solely about the children and trying to protect his relationship with the children, and to the extent that he could, increase his access to the children. And when I realized that's the fight that I was fighting, I was like, you know what, I can get behind that. And he told me that, Donna had was saying he was stupid and saying, bad things about him to the children. So it was enough to really kind of get me fired up. And once I get fired up, then that's normally when I'm in a case.
And just so I should mention, it's Webster and Batista is your firm, right? Baptiste?
Yes, Louis Baptiste, who Dan introduced me to.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's really incredible. Just but as you said, I think I had one pro bono assigned case by the court, an adoption case. And there, when they are adopted, everyone is just so happy, and it's so wonderful, and it's part of family law that's terrific. So when you talk about you were not only just intrigued but smitten, I guess, by this gentleman who just wanted to have his kids, understand his kids, that really kind of goes with your empathy that you had along with the adoption, because that type of thing is what you see, and that's what you want to help people in, I think.
Yeah, the adoptions are powerful. My first one, the judge did a remarkable job of, it was a step parent that was adopting a young lady whose mom was like out of the picture forever. It was actually a bailiff. And it was his daughter. And man, the judge, like Judge Fleury, he basically brought the young lady up and he said, "Do you understand how special you are? Like, she wants." Yeah, I'm gonna start crying if I talk about it. So I got to.
No, that's you should, because I think people, we all think family law, and that's people should know that there's certain parts of family law, such as this, that will make you cry. Right? That's what, you know.
There wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom that day. I promise you. And I can't tell the story without crying. I mean, it was that powerful. So that was beautiful, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, generally speaking, family law is just the worst, and yeah.
I know you have a construction background. I thought, because I've done construction defect law, I thought you might have gotten into some of that. Do you handle any of that stuff?
I represent some construction companies in general and different things. I've done some kind of defect work, third-party beneficiary defect kind of work. Sure. I provide corporate counsel to a couple of the companies that I used to work with way back in the day. So I do some of that. It's honestly, I don't know. I need a little. I get bored if I do the same thing over and over again. I have to be trying to learn something new, doing something new. So I kind of have a varied practice just because of that.
Yeah, of course. So in this particular case, you had no idea what you were getting involved with, I'm sure. And now, in retrospect, what's that?
Certainly not this.
Yeah, of course. So give us your initial impressions on Wendi Adelson and the Adelson family as you were getting to know Dan and the issues he was dealing with.
Well, when I was reading the papers the night before, all the filings, I kind of concluded that, Wendi was pretty self-interested and that it really was about money for her. When I met with Dan, he made it clear to me just how kind of obnoxious Donna was and how dangerous Donna was. Like, I mean, I legitimately didn't see her like a physical danger or threat, but I absolutely saw Donna as a threat to the relationship that Dan had with his children. And so, the papers were annoying, frankly. And that was one of my first concerns. I was like, at some point you just make the judge despise you when you're kind of bombarding them with filings. And, at some point you need to like cut the wheat from the chaff, separate the wheat from the chaff, and like focus on what really matters. So that was my primary concern was, can I get Dan to do that and make sure that we don't fall back into that pattern of just filing after filing, and that we could hopefully reach an agreement, because I got the distinct impression that the litigants were drafting many of the papers, certainly Dan. I mean, I felt like Dan was drafting a lot of those and his lawyer was fine with signing them. I just don't want to practice that way. Tallahassee's a small legal community, especially in the circuit court, and the judges talk. And I don't want the judges going to lunch and saying, that's Stephen Webster. I mean, he just practices in a really offensive way. So I care a lot about that, because when I go in front of them, I want to hopefully know that they're going to treat me fair. So
as attorneys, all you've got is your reputation. That's it.
Yeah. And speaking about value and reputations, we'll talk about Linda Bale in a bit, but you said that when you first met with Dan, he made it clear to you that how he felt that Donna was dangerous. How so? In a physical way, or dangerous to his relationship with his children?
He just made it clear to me that she was destined to alienate him from his children. And, parental alienation is something that obviously gets a lot of focus in family law courts. And he had some solid examples for me already, but I think what he kind of conveyed to me was that it was going to be a pattern that was going to persist, unless something happened. And so that was really kind of where I was trying to line up my fight, was on the alienation, because I felt like that was the most important issue for Dan. It was. And, I felt like that somebody needed to intervene. And at the time, I was naive enough to think that certainly these well-to-do, sophisticated people in South Florida, if a circuit court judge looks at them sternly and reads them the riot act, they're going to course correct and change their behavior. Like now, I don't think that would have impacted them at all. But
Yeah.
No, they
I do
wouldn't
criminal
have.
law a lot, and I had a client, very well-to-do client, very good client, terrific client, was arrested on a false charge where the mother put the daughter up to saying something that was untrue, and of course the prosecutor saw right through it and dropped it before it even went to grand jury. It wasn't, he didn't have to go that far. But that's what we see, and that's why I decided I didn't want to do family law. Did he give you any specifics or that you can relay as to what he thought was probably one of the most egregious situations of Donna destined to commit parental alienation and get the kids away from him?
she had, on one of the Skype calls, I can't remember which one of the sons had said, Grandma said Daddy's stupid. And he had heard Donna off camera, he told me, say stupid on the phone when he had called one time. And he was just convinced that that was going to persist, and it was an ongoing pattern nonstop. And we all know now it almost certainly was, it was going to be. So that was just it. And that kind of stuff eventually just can wear on a child. And Wendi wasn't giving him his right of first refusal nights, and she was letting Donna keep the kids all the time. And so cruel. Danny and I think both thought, and like I said, naively, that if we could convince the judge that kind of behavior was occurring, that the judge would figure out a way to put a stop to it.
Yeah, and who knows what's being said that you weren't really learning about. I mean, who knows? And on the right of first refusal, for those who don't understand how that context in family law, it's if one parent has a conflict, you should go to the other parent first before farming the kids out to somebody else. And apparently that wasn't happening. So let's jump to, and you mentioned this in some of your early remarks there about what Wendi might have been doing that was going to cause issues for you and made you kind of want to stay away from the case. And fraud was an issue, a huge issue as it turned out. Tell us about what was really in the offing on or about the day that Dan Markel was killed.
This is interesting.
So Dan had told me that meeting, and he had the proof, he had documents to back it up, that Wendi had not disclosed two bank accounts and some other personal property, diamonds and things like that. And that she didn't disclose those on her financial affidavits. And those financial affidavits are critical. I mean, it's the parties are swearing and affirming to the court what the marital assets are, so that the court can fairly divide those assets ultimately. So, I mean, it's a very critical filing, and it's not one that you can just kind of half-ass, for lack of a better term. And so he had dead bang proof, and I'm sorry I said that, it was a bad expression, that Wendi, had in fact committed fraud on the court. And he had already kind of laid that out in a motion for contempt before he asked me to get on board. But he had the documents. And so I told him what we need to do is we need to send over requests for admissions, which is a discovery device that you can force the other party, compel the other party to admit or deny certain allegations. And I said, we need to lay out all the allegations that are material to the fraud and to some of the other issues that he was taking in front of the court, like the alienation, and ask her to admit or deny those things as either being true or false. And no matter which way she went, I didn't care, because if she denied it, I was going to have proof that she committed another fraud on the court. And if she admitted it, then I was going to have proof that she committed a fraud on the court. So it literally did, as a lawyer, you always love it when you can put somebody in a position where you don't even care how they respond. Either way they go, damned if they do and damned if they don't. And so that was the position we were going to put her in. And I told Dan, I said, that, look, I mean, going back to our initial conversation about not wanting to do family law, I said, this could have, serious ramifications for Wendi's professional licensure and her job or work, profession in general. I said, if we have to do this in order to make sure that you're protected and your positions are advanced, then so be it. I'm good for it if we have to. But I feel like this is something that is so significant that I should go meet with her lawyer, who I knew, and just at least try to talk to him and see if there was some old-fashioned way that we could figure out to bring this case to a close that wouldn't just involve, full-fledged thermonuclear war, because that's murder. Where we were heading. That's where I was heading. That's why my friend referred him to me, because I'm good for that. I can't tap dance. I can't paint, but for whatever reason, God thought that I should have these certain skills, and the skill set I have is I'm pretty ruthless and vicious and tireless in court.
Can't imagine
and defending people or fighting for people. So, I met with her lawyer rather, and he said,
Well, can I just interrupt you and ask you when that was in relation to his death, his murder? Do you know?
It was June 24th, 2014.
Okay.
And I went to his office, and he's a very prominent lawyer, highly regarded. And I just told him, I said, look, Jimmy, I don't like where this is headed. If we have to go there, we have to go there. But I'm going to file something on July 18th that I really feel like once I file it, the horse is going to be out of the barn and there's not going to be any going back. And I really believe that ultimately it's going to have dire consequences for your client, Jimmy. And I knew him. I'd worked with him before. When I mentioned that white collar criminal defense lawyer I worked for, he had worked on cases with us mutually. And I knew him, and he's a different guy in the courtroom. He's one of those people in the courtroom. He kind of comes off like all shucksy, all folksy.
Got the folksy thing, yeah.
Yeah, and he does it very well. I mean, he defended prominent politicians who were indicted and acquitted them. I mean, the guy's good. But when you're in the office preparing for trial, that's not how he is. And so he was doing that all shucks thing to me and the folksy thing, and I was like, okay, I mean, I'm wasting my time here, but so be it. I did what I wanted to do.
Hold on 1 second. I just want to say, comment here. Would Dan want all his private, personal life aired like this? I sure would not. You guys want to answer that? Because let me tell you something. Dan would want justice. Dan would want us to keep talking and put everybody away that had him murdered. That's all I'm saying. And nobody's digging into his private business. What do you mean private business? No. I don't think so. Just saying.
My conscience is clear. And I literally said that to him. I got up. I said, okay, thank you for your time. And I walked to the door, and when I had the doorknob in my hand for his office door, and he said, Stephen. And it was the first time he wasn't like all shucks in me. And I looked back over my shoulder, and he said, I know what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it. And I said, well, thank you, Jimmy. I said, look, if we can find a way to stop this, great. And if we can't, then that's fine too. I said, but my conscience is clear because I feel like I came here and did what I felt like I had to do. And I said, but I'm filing, what I'm going to file is on July 18th. So your client has until then to try to reach back out to me and see if we can get a dialogue going. Yeah. And then they never reached back out. And so I was working
what were the motions, Stephen, exactly? Did you tell him? Or?
It wasn't really a motion. It was just a request for admission. It's a document that you send.
Oh, it's a request for admissions. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
And so we had 24 of them. Dan had added some, and I was probably going to take some out. And we worked on those. I started working on them like a week before. And on Thursday, before the murder, I really kind of finalized my draft, sent it to Dan. He had sent it back to me with some proposed changes and additions, really. And then I had highlighted those and kind of sent them back to him and said, we need to discuss these tomorrow. And so we agreed we were going to talk Friday morning, the day of the murder. And I was traveling and I was in the central time zone with my children. And he called me. It was at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And as we had arranged, but my children were jumping on the bed. It was crazy. And I said, Dan, I can't do this right now, man. Let me get the children fed. Let me get them in the truck, in the car. Let's get a movie on. They'll be chilling. And then I can get on the phone with you. And so I told him that I would call him back at, I believe it was 10 Central, 11 Eastern, if I'm correct. I can't ever remember. But anyway, it would have been probably 15 minutes after he was shot, based upon the timeline that I heard at the last trial. But just before I called him, my wife decided she needed to make a stop at a mall. And so I Googled, found a mall 10, 15 minutes away. I said, that's actually better. You can take the children inside. I'll get on the phone with Dan. I'll finalize these things. We'll file them.
This is so sad.
And I called and he didn't answer. And it was really, really strange to me because Dan was very responsive to me. I remember this happened more than once. He would, even if he was with his children, he would answer and say, "I'm with the boys. I can't talk right now," and he'd hang up. And
That's right. Okay, so
really
I misspoke before. I just want to pause it right there. So he was, I remember him talking about in another interview that he was frustrated that Dan Markel did not call back. But then I completely forgot that he had said that at least he would answer the phone, even if he was with his kids, and be like, "I'll have to call you back later." So I just wanted to say, correct myself. I misspoke before when I said that he had done that before. No, he's always answered the phone, but not necessarily spoken to him immediately, and then would just say, "I'll call you back."
you would get from Dan, but he would answer. And so for him not to answer, it really kind of unnerved me a little bit. I was like, okay, is he getting cold feet? And I believed that Wendi was still like manipulating him. Dan didn't want to have this awful relationship. He had a new girlfriend he was very happy with. She's very successful, beautiful woman. I mean, he was happy in that regard. So I think he wanted to try to have some normalcy over there. And so I worried that she could prey on that and manipulate him. And so I had actually told him, too, going back to your point about family law people making false allegations in order to gain a tactical advantage in family law cases. I had actually told him, because I knew that they had met at a park and discussed, the kids and one of the issues they had going on. And I told him, I said, I don't want you around her at all. Dan, if I find out you're around her,
wow,
I'm going to quit this case, because I firmly believe that she's capable of making a false allegation against you of some battery or
sexual
slapping
violence,
her, kicking her, whatever. And then they're going to use that to get you charged. They're going to file for an injunction. And then they're going to use all of that as collective leverage to get what they want, which is the children removed back down to Miami. And he said, okay. And I didn't believe him, by the way, when he said, okay. I still felt like do it. So that was where my mind went when he didn't answer, and he hadn't called back like right away. I started thinking she got to him and she convinced him not to file this today because her lawyer knew I was filing it on that day. And I was thinking to myself, I shouldn't have gone and told him, because I should have just done it. And then by like 2:30 or 3, I still hadn't heard from him. And that was when I honestly started to get angry. I was like, he's wasting my time now. Like, I mean, don't bring me in and ask me to give you advice if you're not going to follow my advice. I'm not trying to sound callous, but that's honestly how I was feeling at that moment. And then I got a phone call from a police officer at the Tallahassee Police Department who I had worked on stuff with, and she was in my phone, knew her by first name. And so I said, "Hey, Annie, like, what's going on?" I just answered kind of nonchalant. And she said, "How do you know Dan Markel?" I was like, "What?" She said, "How do you know Dan Markel?"
Oh my gosh.
And I literally like rocked back in the seat. And then I was like, she's in violent crimes. Annie works in violent crimes. Wendy's done it. She's accused Dan of some sort of nonsense. And I said, "He's my client. I want to talk to him right now." And she said, "You can't." I said, "Yes, I can. I represent him right now. I want to talk to him right now, Annie." And she said, "You can't, because something really bad has happened."
Oh my gosh.
And as soon as she said it, and I've said it before, and I know it sounds totally weird, but I knew at that moment they had killed him. Just, I don't know if it was the tone of her voice, if it was the words. I don't know. Dan reached down and spoke to me. I don't know what it was, but I knew at that moment they had killed him. And
you've said twice now, they. I mean, when that flashed through your mind, who was they?
Wow.
I mean, I knew the family in general. I knew Wendi didn't go do this herself.
Yeah, listen
not
to
she
that.
wouldn't be involved in it, but I knew it would have been a collective involvement. And I certainly suspected Donna. I didn't even know much about Charlie. When Dan had spoken about him, and I remember Dan just kind of describing him as odd. But we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about Charlie. So I wasn't thinking about him, but I was definitely thinking Wendi and her mom.
So that's way back in 2014. So I want to know. Do you guys want to know? And I'm going to keep playing this, but there's so many spots, so many areas that I wanted to like stop. And I don't want to I know some people like you to just keep playing it, but I can't help it. I want to address a couple things. He knew back in 2014 about this. And I'm wondering, did he come forward at that time? Is there going to be, something on record that Stephen Webster went to the police station and told him, "Look, the family did this," I'm just curious just how much or was it said and they've ignored it for so long, and only now later on are they realizing and putting the pieces together? So somebody said before about Wendi hating Ruth Markel. So let me tell you something about Ruth Markel. When Dan was murdered, there was a little bit of a little bit of camaraderie between Wendi and Ruth in the beginning, just, to save face. Yeah, okay, you can see the kids, whatever. But then it slowly started to drift. And Ruth talks about it in her book that she wasn't seeing Wendi anymore. Like Wendi wasn't even calling. And then when they made the arrests for Sigfredo and Luis Rivera, all of a sudden, Ruth had found out about it, was one of the first people to find out about it, arrests are being made, keep it on the lowdown. And Ruth, at this moment, giving the benefit of the doubt to Wendi, assuming that she wasn't involved in this, had put a call out to Wendi saying, hey, they made arrests, but she didn't say who. And only then did Wendi call her right back. Like, she had been calling her on other things and Wendi would just totally ghost her. But then when she leaves a message going, hey, arrests have been made, and then Wendi called back right away, and she's like, what? Give me the details. What do you know? Blah, blah, blah. And then she gave her information. And then again, after that, she hardly ever spoke to Wendi again after that. So I just wanted to point that out because somebody had mentioned that about how Wendi hated Ruth. Well, Ruth was a thorn in her side at that point. She's not like my mother-in-law anymore. I divorced Dan Markel. And she knew that family was going to come knocking on doors for answers. She knew that was going to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. But okay, I'm going to switch back because this is really interesting and I want to finish listening to it. Here we go.
And, probably others.
Yeah. And the last thing you had said to her attorney on June 24th, going on and holding onto that doorknob, was I'm filing on July 18th. That's also what sticks with him, that I'm filing on July 18th. And I can't imagine an attorney not relating that to their client. I mean, did you ever have a conversation with her attorney after this happened?
Very strange conversation.
Oh.
I like him. He's a good man and very good attorney. So I don't want it to come off like I don't respect him, because I totally respect him. But I was sitting in my office, and I don't know when it was. To me, in my mind, it was like a week after we got back from the baseball tournament. So it was 2 weeks after the murder. And I was in a back conference room, and I was supposed to be working on a case. And I was staring at the wood floor. I remember it. And the sun was shining on the wood floor, and I was just staring at the floor, thinking about Dan being killed. And I couldn't stop thinking. I was in a haze. And the receptionist buzzed the conference phone, or the phone in the conference room, and it kind of startled me back out of my stupor. And she said, "There's somebody on the phone for you. It's a doctor's office in Miami." And I was like, why is a pediatrician's office in Miami calling me? So I was like, okay. So I get on the phone. Young lady said, "Are you Dan Markel's attorney?" And I said, well, I don't even know how to answer that right now. I think by then we already filed the notice of death and everything out. I was like, I don't know. I yes, I am. I said, yes. And so she said, okay, well, we need to get your authorization because the mother wants to have the children seen at our office. And I said, so then I was like, well, shit, excuse my language. I was like, what am I going to do here? And I said, look, if those children need treatment, you have my authorization. Whatever it's good for, I don't know, but you got it full 100%. And she could tell I was kind of panicked. And she said, oh, no. There's nothing wrong with them. They're fine. The mother just wants to change the pediatrician from Tallahassee to our office down here in Miami. And I was just gobsmacked. They've done that to me a lot in this case. Just when I think I can't be surprised by these people, they surprise me again. So I was just like, oh my Lord. I'm sitting here in my office, supposed to be working, and I can't even focus on my work because I can't stop thinking about Dan being murdered and how did this happen. And she's out just running errands like it's nothing. And I just was blown away. And then it was probably 20 minutes later that Jimmy called me. And he said, Stephen, that they weren't supposed to call your office. They were supposed to call my office. And he said that was a mistake. And he said, basically, he said, I'd appreciate it if you, didn't say anything to the investigator about this. And I said, Jimmy, you don't know me if you think I'm not going to tell Craig Isom about this.
Yeah.
That's happening. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Isom, the primary investigator in the case with
Yes.
the Tallahassee PD. So do you think that the relaying of that date impacted the murder?
I mean, it clearly didn't initiate it. They were already plotting before then. But, I have to wonder. I certainly did for a long time before I found out, the backstory. For years, I carried it around thinking that
Poor guy.
that was why it happened that day, solely because of me. And at that time, I believed that, I didn't know that they had already come up and tried to kill him in June. You know what I mean? So it was haunting for me. But I mean, I do believe it played a role. And, maybe I don't know. I don't like to think that way. But
Excellent
I think it
point,
played some
Leslie.
role.
Yeah. And you said that they had done this kind of backstabbing to you before. What did you mean by that? When you got the call from the pediatrician's office, because you've been in the case, for about 6 weeks now, 7 weeks before he's killed?
Yes, ma'am. They just
You can call me Linda. It's okay, ma'am. I always think is the kiss of death.
I love this
I'm
interview.
old, I'm dying. I'm in the coffin.
my parents, man. I grew
I
up.
know.
Stop being no politeness here.
It was just a lot of scummy things like the diamond ring. This was another reason why I decided that I was going to help Dan. He told me at that first meeting that his uncle Laser was like very, very important in his life, like almost like a second father to him, to Dan. And he had a Holocaust diamond that he gave to Dan for the engagement ring. And when they divorced, Dan, obviously their family wanted that ring back. And she, at a deposition, she testified under oath she was going to return it to him. Okay. She hadn't yet. Then turned around and still never returned it. Never gave him, and it's just things like that. And then, when you find out about the emails and she's talking about converting them to, to the Catholic faith and dressing them up in Hitler Youth uniforms. I mean, it's just like over and over again, these people find a way to up their level of evil. And you think at some point there's going to be a ceiling on it, but apparently there is no ceiling on the amount of evil these people are possessed by. So
I think the jury is seen by that. So did you get to watch the Linda Bailey testimony? So I guess I have two questions. Do you know her, since you said that family law, and I agree with you, is usually a pretty small practice in different counties and different courts. And if you did or learned about or read it, what did you think about?
And she was the expert that testified on behalf of the defense on the family law issue.
Deep dive
Right.
true crime knows her.
This was just a run of the mill. It was $80,000, no big deal. No one was upset. Type of situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they killed him. So for me, that probably means it was contentious. I don't know. I mean, Linda and all of her expertise, I mean, she can draw whatever conclusion she wants. But when your side kills my client, I feel like that's confirmation that it was a little bit contentious, probably.
That's probably the best answer that anyone has given who's watched Stephen.
Yeah, and Georgia probably could have used that. Ms. Kappelman could have used that as a button to her cross-examination, although she did a fine job. Were you surprised as to Ms. Bailey, how recalcitrant she was, just so entrenched on issues that a human would understand are emotional? No, not that emotional. They worked it out themselves. It wasn't emotional. It just seemed odd to me, almost like somebody who doesn't really work with people very much, and yet that's what she does.
Yeah, I only saw snippets, but I saw one snippet where she was refusing to admit that just divorce in general is emotionally charged. And Georgia was like apoplectic over it, and Georgia doesn't get apoplectic. Georgia doesn't have emotions. So I thought it was obnoxious. My wife's a lawyer and she watched it. I was still maybe going to have to testify, so I didn't watch. And but my wife gave me a full report after that it was just gross.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let me ask about the trial.
Gross is a really good word for the testimony.
Yeah,
I say it's an understatement. I say you're being kind, Stephen.
Yes, it was icky already. So for what you do know about the trial, I'm assuming maybe you've gone back and looked at some of it since you learned you weren't going to be a witness. Have you learned anything from this trial that changes your opinion as to Wendy's involvement, either made it less likely or more likely?
Yeah, there were some things. First of all, that text that she sent to Charlie that was deleted, the sweet text.
Here we go.
That's intriguing to me. One of the things that I don't know if it was, I kind of heard it, that the true meaning of gibbers came about.
Right.
Yeah. The Jew in boots thing.
Jew in boots. Yeah. That she's testified now multiple times had no meaning. It was just a
silly name. Just a silly name.
Silly name she came up with to make him less dangerous or whatever her stupid testimony was. That just shows you that she is just a prolific liar. I mean, if her lips are moving, she's lying. That the chances are. That one really offends me, because one of the things that I respected about Dan the most was undoubtedly the father that he was. I mean, he was such an amazing dad. I've said it before and I mean it sincerely. I'm not saying it just to be nice. He inspired me to be a better father. He made me realize that I don't take advantage of the time I have with my children the way I should. I'm not present the way I should be. I don't take advantage of every opportunity, and I still don't, and don't live up to Dan's standard. But he certainly made me aware of it. And the first part of solving a problem is recognize you have one. But the second thing that I really admired about Dan was his faith. You meet a lot of people that claim to have faith or, claim to be, have some sort of spirituality. And then you watch them and you're like, they talk the talk. Do they really walk the walk?
Wow.
And to me, which is almost worse than just being, totally atheist. But gosh, he was so devoted to his faith. And to me, it made him beautiful. It was like one of the things that made him so amazing and incredible. And for them to mock that, like all the way down to that level, that granular level, it just makes me just disgusted.
Why do you think they did that at some point? Because I assume that one of the reasons they liked Dan Markel is because the Adelsons were Jewish and Wendi was then dating a nice Jewish man who could be a professor and they'd have kids and there'd be no issue. And then all of a sudden they're berating him with the most grotesque of gibbers, just grotesque. And then lying about it, in my opinion, just like yours, about, that's just a name we gave him,
Yeah, I don't really have a good answer for you on that question. It's this case has several issues that I stay on a hamster wheel of trying to figure out, and I have for 11 plus years. And that's one of those issues that I just can't really land on a good answer other than Donna just hated him everything about him. And so that was such a big part of Dan that they had to hate it that much, but it's totally crazy. I mean, because they purport to be, Jewish. I understand that there are levels of faith and orthodoxy, but to go to that level where you talk about Hitler Youth and stuff like that.
Bad.
That's sick.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sick. So do you think Wendi's going to be arrested? And if so, when would that happen? Sooner rather than later?
I think she will, and I think it'll be within the next few months. I believe that they'll be getting the grand juries. I mean, that case, I think, highlighted that you have to suspend a lot of disbelief to land on the conclusion that Wendi didn't know about this beforehand. The television, those children didn't break that TV with a remote control.
Nope.
That did not happen. Forcing Jeff Lacasse to sit there and watch a movie on this broken television, like clearly just trying to drill down on an alibi. Then making sure that Jeff was going to be in town, so anxious to figure out, how did Donna get Dan's license plate and car information and her day planner down in Miami? So for me, there's no doubt that Wendi knew about it beforehand. And she was aware it was going to happen. And she told Jeff that a week before, he testified to it, that time it wasn't a joke, that it sent chills down his spine. So much so that he reported it to another colleague who came in and confirmed that happened. So yeah, it's time for Wendi to face the music. And I don't take a lot of glee out of that because I can't imagine what those poor children have already endured. But Dan deserves, and the Markels deserve, a full measure of justice.
How about Dan, I assume, obviously talked about Donna and the control and the intertwining of Donna and Wendi. What about Harvey? What did he say, if anything, about Harvey?
He didn't even speak about Harvey that I can recall, other than what he did for a living. And I think, from what I've seen, it certainly seems like Harvey's kind of a pacifist. He just kind of goes along, with whatever Donna plans. But it was clear Donna was the shot caller in that group.
Definitely.
I've labeled her in the show Madonna Adelson for Ma Barker, and John Gotti as the Don, that nothing happened in that family, that she was she put the capos out there and the lieutenants, but that she was in charge of that family. That's how it came off from me, the way Georgia presented the case this time.
Well, I think that's
I know
accurate.
you didn't see it, but
I think it's 100% accurate. That's who she was. She was like in charge.
Yeah, and you could tell through the course of this trial and when convicted that that's not how Donna planned it. That was not something she controlled, right? I get the feeling. Tell me what you think about this, Stephen. That initially, okay, they're going to be in Tallahassee. It's a career move. It'll be short term, and then they'll be back down here in Southern Florida where they belong. And then that didn't happen. And when that didn't happen, that's when all of these the plotting and the mischievousness, the evil, escalated to the point that it did. Does that sound plausible to you?
Yes, that was kind of my perception as well. That FSU's law school really kind of boomed right before they hired Dan. We kind of went top tier. We had a dean Dean Widener, who really did a remarkable job of recruiting top flight professors and building the esteem of FSU's law school. So I think in some respects that kind of set up the situation for Dan, because at that point, for him to make the next logical leap, it was going to have to probably be something far more substantial than FSU or Miami or any law school in Florida.
By the way, guys, Wendi likes to tell everybody that Dan could not get a job down in Miami when he left FSU to go down to Miami to give Miami a try for Wendi. And then he goes to get a job at Miami. She likes to tell people that they didn't want him or didn't get the job down there. That is what I've heard when I've seen her testify to. But I found out that there are some credible sources that say that he did get a job down there, but like at FSU, where he was like a package deal, you have to take my wife too. And Wendi never got a job at FSU, as far as I've heard, at FSU because of her own right. Apparently, she was part of a package deal. Dan says, well, my wife is with me and she needs a job too. You need to give her a job. So what I heard is that when he went down to Miami, which was like definitely a dream job to get a job in Miami, at that particular school, it's an excellent law school. They did not like Wendi. And because they didn't like Wendi, Dan couldn't settle in there. So that is what I heard. I don't know if anybody else heard anything different, but that's what I was told, is that the truth is that he got the job, but couldn't keep it because they didn't want Wendi. And then they ended up going back to FSU. If anybody says if I have incorrect information, let me know. But that is definitely what I heard. So also, before I continue playing, Justice Served TV is the channel that this interview is on. They're amazing. I love them. By the way, Linda Kenny Bodden, she represented, and I don't like these people very much, but she represented Phil Spector and Casey Anthony. But hey, she did a phenomenal job. She's a great attorney. This is like my favorite interview. In fact, I have another one at another podcaster that I was going to play a clip from, but you know what? It's not even necessary. This is more thorough. They let Stephen Webster really talk and explain his side of the story, and I'm just not even going to bother playing the other podcaster's interview with Stephen Webster because I don't think they gave him a good enough platform to really speak. So I'm really digging this one, so I'm going to keep playing it, and then I do have more to tell you guys about Wendi. I have some other ideas I want to throw around with you about what could change to get this woman arrested finally, because that's what we're waiting for. But let's play a little bit more.
At that time.
Yeah, I mean, I heard he was targeting Yale or Harvard. That's where he was wanting to be.
And I could believe that. Now, if you told me, you came to me and said, Dan wanted to teach at Harvard, I said, of course he does. Who doesn't want to teach at Harvard? But it was going to take a substantial leap to really justify anything else. Would look like you went sideways or maybe even down from FSU. And so that was why it was going to take more time. I mean, Dan was going to get there. I have no doubt. I mean, I'm not sitting here thinking that he was going to stay and he was going to die an old man in Tallahassee. That wasn't going to happen. Yeah. He was going to be, at Harvard or Yale, but he was going to have to publish and speak for probably 15 years, and really kind of, to really build his resume to the point where they came calling. So I think you're right. Yeah. And then when Wendi realized that, she was like, no, I'm not staying in Tallahassee for 15 years. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's so generous. She's one of our loyal viewers. She said she's a proud FSU graduate.
Oh,
senseless logistics, shaking my head. Why? And my partners also have their kids are in FSU too.
Great school, guys.
So everyone is very proud. But the why? Because let me ask you this: have you done other now divorce family law cases, or has this? Is this
soured you on the family law?
Not just. I mean, I impaled your brain. I mean, with horror. I guess.
Yeah, I won't do a contested anything divorce. I've done some mutual, agreed upon, some with children, some without, where they agreed on the child support and all the assets, division, all of that. I've got one of those going right now for a friend, but it's for a friend too. Like you're not going to call my office and say you have a family law case, and I'm going to be like, okay, let's talk. No, I'll refer you to my friends who do family law.
And you haven't testified in any of the trials, right? I'm gathering that.
I testified at Charlie's.
Charlie's.
Yeah.
Oh, you did testify at Charlie's. Okay, I must have missed it. Aaron Penner wanted to know, Mr. Webster testified in these trials before, I believe. Has he testified to all the details he shared here? Were you called in for that or just for the timeline?
No.
Basically, they just kind of they didn't even want me for the timeline. They really wanted me just to, I think, to push back against what Charlie was positing, that it wasn't an acrimonious divorce. They ran that same flag up the flagpole. They wanted to push back on that, and I think they wanted me to humanize Dan a little bit more. Talk about him as a father and as just a person, as opposed to just all the evidence that focused solely on the case. So that was really all my testimony was in the first case, and they were like trying to act like there's no duty to keep your client informed. And that was the other thing the state wanted me to talk about, to push back on, because they were trying to act like there's no reason to think Wendi even knew her lawyer was filing all these things. And she didn't even know her lawyer had filed a motion for contempt. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, remember, this is Wendi who didn't know what a stipulation was. That was their testimony. I don't know. Hey, Stephen, I know when we contacted you earlier, I said 30, 45 minutes. I will say I was not under oath at that time. So if you can stay for a few more minutes, we'd love it. But I don't want to.
I just wanted to make sure I could tell my wife kind of like.
I'm actually. What kind of law does your wife do? I mean, I would love to know.
She was a prosecutor with me and with Georgia, and Kathy Ray, and Jackie Fulford. They used to call them the Skirt Mafia back in the days. And then she has been working now for 15 years with the Police Benevolent Association. She's the general counsel for the Florida Police Benevolent Association.
Great. I love this, a successful, another female lawyer. So generous again. Evidentiary videos that weren't shown are very revealing. Wendi's next and soon. Thanks, Linda Mike. I think you should say thanks to Mr. Webster, Suey, generous. I know you did before that, and all, and everyone thinks that you are an amazing gentleman, and all.
Stephen,
obviously you are.
Let me ask you about your client's family. I met them at court when I was down there, and people, their hearts break for these grandparents. What's the latest? What can they do? What's happening there?
They have so much grace. It's what I always land on with the Markels. Their grace is just something to idolize. To lose your son like this, and to have this tragedy befall you, then to have your grandchildren ripped away from you, then to have their names changed. I mean, it's just like, how much can these people endure? And then when you're around them, it doesn't matter. Like, they're still sweet, and they have, kind of a serenity that I don't even have. And that's just all I can say, is they're just incredibly graceful people. And it's probably rooted in their faith. But they're just beautiful people. I mean, it's one of the other things that hurts so much about this, because I probably wasn't going to get to know them. And to now know that those beautiful people had this horrible thing happen to them. I mean, it's just,
I know the Markel Act, which was passed, I think it was a year ago, really only kicks in if, in fact, one of the parents is convicted for the murder of the other.
Yes.
But when that does happen, the Markels would have a presumption that they have some right to visitation, possibly even custody. But that doesn't those issues haven't kicked in yet. So is there anything they can do now to I guess they have some very supervised short-term visitation?
Thank you, Leslie.
What exactly do they have, and can they do something to get more with those boys?
I'm not aware of any vehicle that's available for them right now. And there's some concern, there's some case law, Supreme Court case law out there. I think it was Scalia that had penned once upon a time, and it may have been like a concurring opinion or dicta, not necessarily the primary part of the holding, where he basically just said grandparents don't have any visitation rights. I think it was Troxel versus Glanville or something like that. And so, it's even the Markel Act is, I'm sure at some point, if it's ever enforced, is going to be attacked.
And you said that you wanted to keep Dan's memory alive, and we've been doing these shows. Michael Bryan's been down there. We've been covering all these. We've been covering all of the trials, and we always have a picture of Dan Markel. Try to in our thumbnails, because you're absolutely right. This is about Dan Markel. Two things. The first is, did he know that the family was trying to change the name of the kids? I guess that's the first question. The second question is what do you want everyone to say when they go out into the masses here, since we are, we're like, let's call this the sanctuary of Dan Markel, to tell people about Dan Markel as you know him?
He never mentioned to me about them changing the names. And if he had mentioned, I would have remembered that. So he must not have known about that.
There's no way he knew that.
That would have made me crazy. And, which isn't a far trip probably, but when people talk about, when you think of Dan, first and foremost, as I've said here, you really can't imagine the father that he was to those children, how much he loved his children. I just think about it all the time. I mean, he would go, when Wendi decided to take them to school, he would go and spend his lunch hour there with the children. I mean, look, I did that for my daughter when she was in elementary school, probably 15 times over the course of, 5 years. I mean, Dan would do it 15 times in a month if Wendi would have taken the kids 15 times to school. He was the greatest father, and to have that taken away from those boys is a horror that I will never come to peace with. Having a loving parent like that is one of the greatest blessings anybody can have.
Wow.
And to have that taken away, it's just an unimaginable tragedy. And he was a man of faith, like I said. He was an academic, obviously, incredibly bright man, but his focus was on those children. And that was what Dan Markel was. He was a father.
Let's hope that one day they see that and they recognize it, and that the alienation has been so great by time, distance, and family, that the kids, because I always say the kids are the ultimate victims here, no matter what. They're always the ultimate victims.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a lot. I've never.
All right, I'm gonna wrap this up and get back to it. First of all, I just want to say one thing about Stephen Webster that I noticed is, you guys know what the fruits are. I mean, you either have God in your life or you don't, and it's okay if you don't. I don't judge anybody who doesn't, but you could tell he's got the fruits in his life, that he loves God and he believes and he lives his life that way, and it's just coming. And whether you're Jewish or not, it doesn't. You could be Jewish, you could be Christian. Faith can go across the board here, right? This man is just. You could just see how kind he is and how loving he is. And I would imagine, he's just talked about the fact that he has kids, that, he loves his children too. So, I hope I get to interview him. I really do, guys. Cross your fingers on that one, that he reaches back out to me, and I can get him on the show. And you know what? You guys can even go ahead and take part in that, and maybe send me some questions that you would want to hear from him. And then maybe I could present that to him. momsforjustice@gmail.com. Go ahead and send me an email. Questions that you think would be interesting that have not been asked, of him, because I think he's an incredible human being. Okay. And to have him on this show, just to give him a platform to vent about everything he's been through. And, I had not heard the majority of this interview until just now. And I'm so glad that I played all of it because it's pretty much over now. But it is phenomenal. This interview is phenomenal, and it speaks volumes about this man. And like I said, and I mentioned earlier, I think he wakes up in the morning thinking about this and goes to bed at night thinking about it. And he pretty much said that he can't get it off his mind. How about that one thing where when he was getting the call from Jimmy, the attorney, who I think is John Lauro, but I don't know for sure. But John, usually somebody with the name John can be called Jimmy for short. So I'm assuming John Lauro called him. And he's sitting there in his office when the call comes in, and he's looking down at the floor thinking about the murder of Dan Markel. I mean, this guy his whole life has been changed completely. And I just really hope that he has peace in his life, and he is also at peace with the fact that there was nothing he could do to change the outcome of this. And he was, a friend and an ally for him. And I just hope he sleeps well at night. So there's that. So Sigfredo Garcia. And by the way, somebody said before they were mentioning he was mentioning Amy Adler again. You guys know I did a whole video on Amy Adler. Make sure you guys watch it. I think it is my top video. It's like over 100,000 views. But somebody mentioned her before, and then Stephen mentioned her, that he was in love with Amy. It kind of made it seem like his interactions with Dan was telling him that, honestly, Dan didn't really have like this big beef with Wendi like we all think. I mean, he just wanted his rights taken care of. He wanted to be able to see his children, raise his kids how he wanted to raise them, and really didn't want to have like a big knockdown, nasty old fight with Wendi Adelson. He really didn't. And one of the things he said to support that was that he was in love with this new woman, Amy Adler, and was going to New York, and his life was coming together, guys. It really was. Dan was not hung up on Wendi anymore. So brings me back a little bit to motive, because I think Wendi wanted Dan to want her again. Again, all right, I'm going off on my tangents like I always do, everybody. I'm very opinionated and I have my theories and all that. But I think Wendi was the big kahuna always in his life and didn't like ever being second best. And I think, Dan didn't want her to leave, did not want the divorce. And I think she liked the attention, because Wendy's the type of person that really loves a lot of attention, right? So everything's on her, all eyes on Wendi, right? So I think when he shifted his focus on Amy and was like, I'm moving on, and then you see how beautiful Amy Adler is, right? I bet you it was just the icing on the cake. It's not the main reason. But if we're talking about motives here, what could the motives be? I think that's one of them. And I think Wendi was like, he doesn't want me anymore like he used to. And I think it pissed her off, guys. And I'm sorry. I know for me, pissed off is a curse word because I never curse. But it felt good to say that one. It's just, I think she was pissed off that she just not used to being second best. And I think she was an afterthought at that point in terms of a romantic interest to Dan. I think yeah. So I just wanted to make a point about that. So another big question mark, guys, is Sigfredo Garcia. Everybody talks about Sigfredo Garcia. Why? Because Zippo, quiet. There's like never anything about him, right? Why? Why is he so quiet? Okay, so honestly, he could be the smartest one out of all of them. I thought Luis Rivera was the smart one, but maybe it's Sigfredo, right? Think about it. Why has he stayed so quiet all this time? You'd expect that if he knew anything useful, that he would speak up, right? Especially if it could help him to get a little less time, right? I have to believe that he knows at least something okay? Because he's the one who told Luis Rivera in the car. That's Wendi right there. So guys, we know for a fact that Sigfredo Garcia has info. Why isn't he talking, everybody? So that leads me to think that he's waiting for that ideal moment, that he's waiting for the big kahuna to be tried. I don't know. It's possible. I know he won't help the police, Leslie. I know. Oh, gang stuff? Okay, maybe. But you know what? He could just negotiate a change of prison, lesser time. There's so many things he could do here. I don't know. It's just something I wanted to touch on. Another person who could possibly crack the case and lure the arrest a little bit closer. I don't know. No, he's not getting out of prison anytime soon, but could he get out of prison? Could he have a shot, like, to get out in 10, 20 years maybe if he talks? So it's just another person. And then let's talk a little bit about Charlie, okay? Because I am not giving up on Charlie. There are many recorded conversations where Charlie himself points the finger right at Wendi Adelson, calling her behavior suspicious, acting like he's the one suffering because of her. I mean, he is seething in some of these calls, right? He is so angry, okay? That is gonna take its toll on Charlie. Okay, the Dave's burger eating, frosty drinking, brother who keeps getting moved around different prisons because, gangs want to like take him out. He used to drive a Ferrari. He was making millions of dollars. You think he's going to sit there and be okay with all this and let this just go on? Okay, that's it. Not to mention, his own sister didn't even call, ask if he was okay. When he was first arrested, didn't check in on him. Nothing. Donna was like telling Charlie, she was practically begging Wendi to recognize her brother. And that didn't happen. Didn't happen. That would piss me off. That would piss me off to no end. Especially when Charlie was such a good big brother to her, right? I mean, they were supposed to be tight, which ties into my whole theory. And again, it's a theory that Wendi, I listed all these different things that I think that Wendi's, why she gave them up in the first 20 minutes on my last episode. I talked about like 6 things that I thought were the reason why Wendi gave up Donna and Charlie right in the first 20 minutes of the interview. Well, maybe, guys, maybe that one was correct when I said that she was sick and tired of people running her life, telling her what to do. And the truth is, Charlie thought that they were close. Donna thought that Wendi and her were close. But maybe underneath it all, she was like, screw it. I'm going to get rid of my husband and I'll take my family out. Allegedly. Okay? This is opinion only. Do you guys ever wonder why I say it so often? That I always say speculation, theory, opinion. I don't know. Use your imagination. There's a reason. Okay, so with Charlie, I just find that really interesting. I mean, remember that specific call between Charlie and Donna where he's like really furious and he says something about Wendi driving. She drove down to the crime scene. How stupid can you be? Or something like that. So the anger in his voice says a lot. Okay. And then it just shows a real tension between Charlie and Wendi. So you sit there and you're wasting away in prison. I know there's an appeals process, but hey, he could maybe dodge that altogether by just showing up, okay, in a room with the prosecution and his attorney and say, I've had enough of this crap. I want out of here. I'm going to start talking because you know what? She didn't care about me. She didn't show up. She wasn't there for me. It might be around the corner. So when you've got a lot of things being as possibilities here, the chances of it happening become greater, right? So you got Sigfredo could flip, Charlie could flip, Donna could flip. I doubt it, but Donna could flip. Okay. And then you've got this damning, now this isn't a flip, but you've got this damning testimony from Webster. Okay. You got Sarah Youssef. Nobody heard from her yet, right? We know about the deposition, but she hasn't gotten on the stand yet. Thank you so much, Marie. You're so sweet. I so appreciate it. Was lurking. There was a jail call with Charlie and Donna where Charlie said, why did Wendi leave her alibi? Is that the wording that was used? I don't remember that, but I'm taking your word for it. But thank you so much for your support, guys. Did you guys like this video yet? If you have not, please do so. And also, please make sure that you guys subscribe and check out Chitter Chatter. That is the second channel. It's in the description of this video. Jocelyn and I, we have like we're best friends, and we have like this second channel going. We're going to be talking about so much cool stuff, just about being, just being women at our age. We're in our 50s. We're going to talk about everything. Raising our kids, facials, the products we use on our faces, all sorts of stuff. We'll still do a little true crime, but it's not as like intense as like Moms for Justice, the true crime channel, which I will still be doing. So, this is my baby, and I love you guys, and I'm never going to let you guys go ever. But I promised Jocelyn that we would do this, and I think it's going to really be great because me and her, we have a really good little connection going as friends, and I think a lot of you will enjoy this show, so make sure you guys check it out. Subscribe to the channel. Link is in the description box. Okay, back to Charlie, because I'm venting about Charlie, and I hope I'm not boring you guys. So it gets really complicated, though, regarding Charlie, because if investigators already have a ton of WhatsApp messages between Wendi and Charlie, then technically they wouldn't even need Charlie to testify or flip. Has anybody thought about that? And the messages, the WhatsApp messages, maybe they only have like a record of the WhatsApp messages happening, but they don't have the content of the messages. So that could be it too, right, guys? I don't know how WhatsApp works, and I also know that WhatsApp was kind of wishy-washy in 2014, so I don't know what that could do, but the messages, if they're there, they will speak for themselves, and then Charlie maybe knows he can't flip because they're not going to accept it because they have enough evidence to bring to Wendi, and Charlie would be no use to them. Plus, Charlie's lied so much in the past, how credible would he be? I mean, his stupid extortion story, right? Really, people. Stapled money and, oh gosh, you're being extorted when they could just come and kill you and take your money out of your safe. They don't need to go drive 7 hours out of their way to go to Tallahassee to kill some guy they don't even know. Okay. And by the way, Louis Rivera, some people don't like that I say Louis Rivera didn't want to kill Dan Markel, and he didn't like the fact that there were kids involved either. Unfortunately, he did it anyway. He went along with this thing, and he's where he belongs. But Louis Rivera had more sympathy than a lot of people. Okay? So that's that. So the WhatsApp messages bother me in that way, unless they don't have the content of each WhatsApp message. Okay, and then I still believe, though, she's going to be indicted, though, guys. I really do. Either way. It just might take longer. And I think the state's just waiting for that right moment. But at this point, with all the circumstantial evidence that's out there, I don't see any reason that she shouldn't be. Okay? At least be put in front of a jury and let them decide. Throw the kitchen sink at it, guys. What do you have to lose? We've got jurors from the Donna Adelson case who've already spoken out in the media that the information they saw, and it wasn't even a trial for Wendi, the information they saw for Donna told them that Wendi was guilty. So what are you waiting for? So there's that whole theory. No, there must be a reason why they're waiting. There must be. Because you could go do it right now, guys. You know, what are we waiting for? The Markels are not getting any younger. Okay? So now, would the case be a slam dunk like Charlie's? No, probably not. But if I were sitting on that jury, I'd say that there is enough. Look, we are the jury, right? We know it all. We know the whole case, guys. So I can tell you right now, I would listen and give her a fair shot. I probably wouldn't be allowed to be on the jury. The minute they found out that I host a podcast called Moms for Justice and I cover this case, they'd be like, get out of here, Carolyn. You're not allowed in here. That's it, done. And you guys would wouldn't make it on the jury either, because they would ask you, do you know anything about this case? And you'd say, yes, she's a total witch and she belongs in jail, and you would be eliminated. But anyway, let's pretend that's not the case. Let's not pretend we got eliminated. If I was sitting on the jury right now, you know, I'm a fair person. I am. And I'm telling you right now, hands down, no doubt about it, it would be guilty. And I would pick guilty in the first degree, just like Donna. I would. So, like I said, what else could be the holdup? Okay, so we've got the Weinsteins, which I'm going to be very careful about what I say about the Weinsteins. Okay, I'm going to give you the verified facts first about the Weinsteins. Okay, and the facts are never fun, right? They're not usually fun. We want to know what the dirt is, and there's a lot of dirt that's being hidden in this case. But here are the facts. Okay, so you've got this family. They're called the Weinsteins. Okay, Peter M. Weinstein is a circuit court judge. Okay, and I did a little shindig on him before. Okay, 17th Judicial Circuit. Okay, Broward County. That's down by Miami. Okay, so it's not Tallahassee. But 21 years as a judge. I'm sorry, 21 years in the scene, 6 years as a judge. Sorry. But anyway, he was a Florida state senator before he was a judge, and that was 1983 to 1996. Okay, he has a son. His name is Michael Weinstein, and he's acknowledged a relationship with the Adelson family and submitted a statement in response to a column that was written. And this is describing his involvement with the Adelsons. That is fact. And then there is, I consider this fact, a credible article, but more importantly, Charlie Adelson on a wiretap call said out loud that Peter Weinstein, the judge, is Wendy's godfather. Okay. I know I've talked about this before, and I've had the same, I get like flooded with questions about this. I'll get, that can't be, they're Jewish. And I'm like, well, it can be. All right. I'm going to tell you why. A, it's not common. It actually does sound absurd when you first hear it. That is not usually the case for a Jewish family to incorporate a godfather for their child. But I looked it up, and apparently it can be done, and it has been done in the past, not just in the Adelson family, but there's other Jewish families that have, said, here, you're so-and-so's godfather. So, but the fact is that Charlie said it himself, that Wendi is the goddaughter of Peter Weinstein. And he says it on a wiretap call. And I heard it for myself. It's absolutely true. By the way, Pretty Lies and Alibis has all the calls. If you guys need a place to go, if you don't already know, that's where a lot of the great calls are. And it is on one of those. If you want, I can play it on the next video. Let me know if you want me to do a video more on that. But I can certainly pull it up for you guys. Anyway, so that is a fact. Okay, so here's what I want you to think about. So judges, prosecutors, and senior attorneys often operate in the same professional circles. And that means like balls and dances and get-togethers and all that. And they all hang out with each other, okay? And maybe you can sprinkle in some doctors and dentists there, right? These are high-achieving people that are high up. And the Weinsteins are friends with the Adelsons. So they kind of ran around in the same circles, okay? Now, Peter Weinstein, his name carries a lot of weight. Okay. And he's, a former judge and longtime legislator. People in the legal community know him, okay? And they respect him, and they've worked with him. So when prosecutors are aware that the defendant or a person of interest has ties to someone of that stature, well, they may unconsciously tread very carefully, right? And double checking their procedures and anticipating defense scrutiny and things like that. Now, it can subtly slow or temper the aggressiveness of the prosecution, though, not because of any wrongdoing, but because everyone wants to avoid appearing biased or careless. Now, here's what bothers me about them being associated with the Adelsons is that I would believe, it would not surprise me if there was an effort to cut corners and make some personal calls for some favors regarding the Adelsons. Now, a lot of you could say to me, well, how could he have any effect on them if Charlie and Donna ultimately are in jail now? So how would he be protecting Wendi, but he didn't protect Charlie and Donna? Because apparently Harvey and Peter Weinstein were friends too. That's what I read. Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because there is gray, murky water, okay, about all three cases. All right. The reason why I believe there is a separation of Wendi from Charlie and Donna is because with Charlie and Donna, everything was recorded. There are wiretaps. There are emails, okay, that Peter Weinstein, if somebody like a Peter Weinstein was to help them, he'd probably be like, all bets are off. You know, your case sucks. And look at all this. I can't help somebody like this and not be found out or not, you know what I mean? But with Wendi, she was smart. There's no documentation of her. There's no calls. There's no taped calls. There's no wiretaps on Wendi. So, yeah, maybe he could help her. I don't know. What do you guys think? Because I just think that with Donna and Charlie, if they turned around and let's say they have this high-powered family like the Weinsteins that they could go to make some calls and help them out, I would think they'd be like, sorry, dude, you know, there's too much evidence against you. So, can't help you. But Wendi might be special because A, she's the goddaughter, and 2, there's nothing documented on her. So that I can work with, right? Okay, she's been very slick, very smart. I'm going to give her that. She did all those things. So, you know, guys, innocent until proven guilty, right? But we all have our hunches and we all have our beliefs. So, you can only protect someone when there's gray area, is basically the bottom line. Charlie and Donna were tied to black and white evidence. Wiretaps, cash. Oh, yeah, the cash transfer. The laundered money. Literally laundered money. Money that was washed with soap. Okay. And recordings that left no room for interpretation, people. We all heard them. They're bad. But with Wendi, her part of this story still is in a gray, murky area. And perception, influence, all that can make all the difference. So I just wanted to make sure that I covered that part too. So the biggest victims, gosh, first of all, the biggest victims here are the two boys, number one, the children. What a travesty that these children are living with this family. Okay. And then you got the Markels. And I saw somebody before writing like so many victims in this case. Stephen Webster's a victim. I mean, this guy is tormented for the rest of his life. This man that he knew for such a short time and had such an impact on his life is now gone. And he was one of the last people to talk to him. Okay. And then you've got Amy Adler, this poor woman. This poor woman was dating him thinking that maybe, I mean, look, I don't know where their relationship was genuinely going. When Amy Adler has never really spoken out. I was told she was timid. She was afraid to fly too. I think she just wanted to separate herself from this because literally, if you think about it, she was supposed to be with him the very next day, guys. So she could have easily been killed if she had been with him. So as a new girlfriend. I just started dating somebody. And then like within weeks, goodbye, they're gone. And not just gone, like drop dead, a heart attack gone. We're talking murdered, shot in the head in broad daylight in your garage. I would have been spooked for a very long time. So I think Amy Adler must have nightmares. She's got to be terrified, right? Other victims. Tamara Demka's a victim. She's a victim here. She was really close to Dan Markel. And then she went to the house that night, the night of the murder, and walked into some bizarre behavior from the Adelsons and her friends Janine or Jane. We don't know which one it is. I personally think it's probably Janine on that one, but I don't know for sure. But Tamara walks around with that empty space in her heart, right? So many people. Sarah Youssef was a really good friend of Wendy's and like took her a long time to come around, but she finally did. And I'm sure she struggles to sleep at night. And you know what? I'm going to give the others a benefit of the doubt. Jane McPherson, Janine, Ritu, Tova Walsh, all of them. We don't know what they're going through, guys. They could be tormented and just don't want to be in the limelight. And they won't come forward. Maybe they feel they don't have enough information to come forward. Maybe something will tug at their heart and they will. But until then, you know, I looked into what we can only look into what we know. Jane McPherson's interview with Wendi, or appearing at the interview that Wendi had with Detective Eisen, her behavior's weird. It's bizarre. And until she comes forward and clarifies some things, we're all going to think it's very strange, right? So, I don't know. So I'm making somebody very nervous. That's new. Did I go off on a tangent? I'm wrapping it up anyway. No, I just got very passionate, I guess. I'm sorry. But anyway, I absolutely love you all. I loved spending my Sunday night with you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I tried to cover a lot of ground. I'm probably going to be on for a lunch on Tuesday. Do you guys want to join me for a lunch? That would be really awesome. And make sure that you like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Please do not forget, you know, I'm so thankful to you all. The channel's doing well and it's all because of you. And I want to keep it the same way I started it out, just very personal. And I really interact with my viewers and, you know, don't want it to become something that is, I don't know, complacent. And I just appreciate y'all for letting me have that platform to do this. And all your support has been great. And don't forget Chitter Chatter. The link is in my description. And I'll be on at some point with Jocelyn in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be so great. I can't wait for the first topic. I will announce that soon. And yeah. So if you guys have any other questions before I go. Let's see. Oh, you're so sweet. I know. Doesn't he look adorable? I love that picture of Stephen Webster that's on the thumbnail. Let's see. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you, Clarissa. Thank you to our moderators, Janine and Clarissa, tonight. They're doing such a great job, and I so appreciate them. I'm going to have to totally do something special for you guys at some point. Already got my wheels spinning, what I can do to help out my moderators. And yeah, that's it really, guys. So I will see you hopefully on Tuesday. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.